Over 421 million people are struggling on less than $3 a day in economies afflicted by conflict or instability. Over 421 million people are struggling on less than $3 a day in economies afflicted by conflict or instability. And this number is projected to rise to 435 million, or nearly 60% of the world's extreme poor by 2030. The assessment carried out by the World Bank experts titled Breaking the Cycle of Conflict, Instability and Poverty found that for the world's poorest people, there is now a stark divide between those living in economies facing conflict or instability and the rest of the world. While the global extreme poverty rate has fallen to just 6%, in economies grappling with conflict or instability, it remains high at 40%. This report is the first ever to assess the impact of conflict and instability on extreme poverty. Today, 39 economies around the world face conflict or instability. This includes 21 economies in active conflict and 18 others with fragile states that lack the strength and resilience to protect their citizens and advance their well-being without external support. These 39 economies are home to almost 1 in 6 people globally. The global community must pay greater attention to the plight of these economies. Jumpstarting growth and development here will not be easy, but it can be done, and it has been done before. With targeted policies and stronger international support, policymakers can prevent conflict, strengthen governance, accelerate growth, and create jobs. Half of the economies facing conflict or instability today have faced those conditions for 15 years or more. Extractive industries often reinforce inequality and autocratic practices, which in turn increase the risk of conflict. As stated in the report, ignoring this threat will only allow it to grow. By understanding the dynamics at play, investing in prevention, and implementing effective policies, we can pave the way for lasting peace, stability, and prosperity for all. Women in these economies are 15 percentage points more likely than men to live in extreme poverty. It notes that early conflict warning systems, particularly those that detect real-time shifts and risks, can enable timely interventions, which are far more cost-effective than responding after violence erupts. Preventing conflicts also means reducing fragility, weaknesses in government institutions that limit their ability to drive sustained economic progress, maintain peace, and uphold justice. Girls are 30% more likely than boys to be out of school, and only 68% of women have access to health services compared with 84% of men. High-intensity conflicts, those that kill more than 150 out of every 1 million people, are typically followed by a cumulative drop of about 20% in GDP per capita after 5 years. The report reveals that in developing economies in general, the extreme poverty rate has been whittled down to single digits. This includes promoting good governance, investing in people, diversifying economies, managing natural resources sustainably, and building resilient infrastructure. But in economies facing conflict or instability, however, it is nearly 40%. Their GDP per capita levels, currently about $1,500 a year, have barely budged since 2010, even as GDP per capita has more than doubled to an average of $6,900 in other developing economies. Moreover, unlike other developing economies, economies struggling with conflict or instability have been unable to create enough jobs on average to keep pace with population growth. In 2022, the latest year for which such data are available, more than 270 million people were of working age in these economies, but barely half of them were employed. The report highlights that once they get started, conflicts tend to persist, and their economic effects are both grave and long-lasting. According to Ahan Koz, the World Bank Group's deputy chief economist and director of the Prospects Group, economic stagnation, rather than growth, has been the norm in economies hit by conflict and instability over the past decade and a half. However, the report identifies that although profits from natural resources account for 13% of GDP on average, these economies have struggled to harness them for broad-based growth and shared prosperity. While conflict and instability inflict heavy costs on poor people everywhere, the report underscores that women bear a disproportionate burden. According to the report, preventing conflict can yield high returns. To break the cycle of conflict, instability, and poverty, The report calls for a new approach that integrates peace building into all aspects of development policy. As we look ahead, the world must recognize that conflict and instability pose an unacceptable threat to human well-being and sustainable development.